Joining me live now from Kochi are two of those Indian Navy pilots who've been flying these missions. They're risky missions, but these are some of the country's most qualified aviators, constantly called in for all manner of humanitarian relief and operations of a kind where civilian assistance is the order of the day. From cyclones to dump yard fires, they are the port of call. Our great honor and privilege to welcome onto our coverage today Commander Sunil. He's a Sea King pilot, and Commander Antaryami, who flies the indigenous ALH Dhruv helicopter. Both of these pilots you see here on your screen, viewer, have been flying firefighting operations across that huge dump yard blaze on the outskirts of Kochi. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with me. Commander Sunil, to you first. As a pilot, you're always prepared for all kinds of things, all kinds of eventualities. You're practically sleeping with one eye open, I imagine, because you can be called for any kind of mission. Tell us about this one, a huge dump yard fire on the outskirts of Kochi. How did it begin? How did you guys go off to fight this fire?
Yeah, good afternoon, Shiv. The moment we got an information regarding the fire, the Navy sprung into action. We had a control room which was set up at the command. And thereafter, once we got our orders, we went into the air straight away and undertook an air recce of the area to understand the nuances of these operations. The recce mainly was to see what is the expanse of the fire, the wind, prevailing wind conditions, the bird activity, any obstructions nearby, and most importantly for the firefighting, we required a water source. Luckily, once we undertook the air recce, we found a water source very near to the scene of fire, which was around 1 to 2 nautical miles. And however, at the same time, we had the various challenges as there was intense bird activity near the being at a dump yard. It was very natural. Thereafter, we had high tension cables which were running along the dump yard. And they were just next to the dump yard, which meant we have to initially fly high, thereafter gradually come down before we disperse the water onto the fire. Additionally, the main challenge was the heavy smoke in the area, because we had to keep ourselves safe, the aircraft safe, and the crew, and still carry out the missions. So once we landed back and we gave our brief to the control room, and mission briefing for the same was undertaken. The aircraft were in a different role. The team on the ground basically worked overnight and to get the aircraft ready for this role, for this firefighting role. And we were ready with the first flight.
Incredible. Commander Antaryami, flying through that smoke, birds everywhere, electricity cables nearby. I mean, this is every aviator's nightmare. I mean, you are trained to, fly in clear visibility, away from any obstacles. And here you're ordered to fly, into a really, really risky airspace. What was that like, flying in that?
It was challenging, Shiv, to say the least, because as you said, you are trained for a different environment. However, this was the real mission, when the challenges were, as brought out by Commander Sunil also, you heard them, flying through thick smoke, close to the high tension wire, in the vicinity of a lot of birds, was actually a challenging task. And but the job was very well specified to us, and the entire command was at it, and the aim was clear. So we found out methodology, how to go about it, and we could undertake quite a few drops, which were, in assistance to the local agencies who were already fighting the fire. So overall, it was a challenging task. However, with a lot of people involved, I'll say the ground crew, the station, when we were preparing, everybody put in their best efforts together, and then the outcome was what you saw on the subsequent days.
Absolutely, because Commander Sunil, the margin of safety, I assume, in such a situation, shrinks considerably, because you're surrounded by things that could affect your aircraft. How do pilots actually assess this while there? Because I'm sure you couldn't have known about all the threats until you're actually in the threat.
Yeah, as I told you, the previous day once we were undertaking the air recce, at that point itself we undertook, basically we did a flying over the high tension cables, and the smoke, because the smoke was still at that point of time it was very heavy. So we during the recce itself, because we knew once the lalde, which is the equipment from where the water is being dispersed, we knew what was the it actually hangs below the aircraft. We
Yeah.
know the exact length, and we know at the height at which we are flying. So we have assessed that, and thereafter and drawn a general route through which will be clear of the smoke, clear of the high tension cables, keeping the risk as minimum as possible, and of course with taking the water source from, say, picking up the water, so that the risk is as minimum. But as you said, some risk cannot be can be just minimized. It cannot be made to zero. So that's what we have been trained for, and that helped us.